I was in the middle of being intimate with my boyfriend Mike when there was a sudden knock on the bedroom door. Mike opened it and found Chloe standing there. Without the slightest hesitation, he left me alone in the room and walked out with her. I stared at the doorway where my boyfriend had just disappeared, and an overwhelming exhaustion washed over me. I packed my bags, deleted Mike from my contacts, and left quietly. But later, when another man offered me flowers, Mike appeared out of nowhere. His eyes red as he stared at me. "Lisa," he said hoarsely, got bored and decided to run away. Mike's t-shirt was still lying on the floor, warm, carrying the faint scent of his cologne. My hand hung in midair. The feeling of his weight against me was still burning on my skin. Yet now the room was empty except for Chloe's laughter drifting faintly from outside. Light, crisp, victorious. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the door he had walked through without hesitation. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, he didn't come back, not even a text. So this was my weight in his heart, like an old sweater that could be tossed aside at any moment. I stood up and began packing. My movements were mechanical, as if I were executing a pre-written program. Makeup, a few frequently worn outfits, my laptop. The photography book he had never once asked about. I didn't own much. One suitcase was enough. Mike's belongings took up 2/3 of the closet. Rows of expensive shirts hung neatly, mocking my own modest things. My phone screen lit up. His smiling face stared back at me from the lock screen, a photo from last summer at the beach, him carrying me on his shoulders under blinding sunlight. My finger hovered over delete contact, trembling, before finally pressing down. Not just Mike. I deleted our shared friend group too, the people who always ignored me at parties. "Goodbye, Lisa," I said out loud. My voice echoed sharply in the empty apartment. Downstairs, New York's nightlife was just coming alive. Yellow taxi lights flowed like a river. I dragged my suitcase 3 blocks before stopping at a roadside motel. The front desk clerk, heavy-lidded, took my cash without looking up. The room smelled of disinfectant and old carpet. I leaned against the door and slowly slid down onto the floor. I didn't cry. I was just tired, bone-deep tired. I opened my photo gallery and scrolled through smiling memories, kissing at the top of the Empire State Building, eating hot dogs at Coney Island, him pretending to help me find a book in the library, only to kiss my neck. Every photo felt like it was mocking me. At 3 in the morning, I finally understood. He wasn't going to call. That call was never coming. The next morning, I woke up to the bitterness of cheap coffee. My phone screen felt unfamiliar. No missed calls, no message from Mike asking, "Where are you?" Of course there wasn't. My bank balance snapped me fully awake. 1 for 7.32, tuition was due next month, and I didn't even have a place to live. I brewed my 3rd cup of coffee in the motel's tiny kitchenette, my fingers hovering hesitantly over my laptop. My student loans were maxed out. I couldn't ask my parents for help. 2 years earlier, when I insisted on moving to New York to study photography, my father had said, "Art won't put food on the table." We had a huge fight. I couldn't go back now, not like this. Rain began falling outside, blurring New York into a gray curtain of water. I put on my only waterproof jacket and went out to look for work, something fast, something that paid. A new beginning. "Hey, you knew?" I looked up. A girl behind the caf counter tilted her chin toward me, pink hair, a nose ring catching the fluorescent light. "You've been sitting here all morning. Need a job?" "We just lost someone." I blinked. I don't have any experience in food service. Who cares? She grinned. "Can you pour coffee? Tell a croissant from a donut?" "That's enough. I'm Zoe." That's how my new life in New York began, at a 24-hour caf called Dawn. $12.50 an hour. 1 staff meal per shift. Zoe shoved me into what she called the break room, which was really just a storage room with a folding table and 2 plastic chairs. "Boyfriend trouble?" she asked, handing me a latte with lopsided foam art. I nodded, stirring the coffee. "That obvious?" "Sweetheart, 10 out of 8 girls who walk in here just dumped a garbage man." Zoe lit a cigarette, then crushed it out when she remembered the no smoking sign. "You'll be fine. Pain is temporary. A new life lasts if you don't look back." She taught me how to use the espresso machine, remember regulars' preferences, and handle drunk customers at 3 a.m. Zoe talked fast, her gestures dramatic. The scars on her arms hinted at stories heavier than mine. By 10 that night, my feet were so sore they felt numb, carrying trays, wiping tables, dealing with drunk customers. Things I had never imagined myself doing had suddenly become my routine. Strangely enough, The exhaustion had a calming effect when your hands are busy and your body aches. There's no room left to think about Mike, no space for self-pity. All I could focus on was not spilling hot coffee on anyone. When my shift ended at 2 in the morning, Zoe shoved a paper bag into my hands. "Leftover sandwiches," she said. "Don't starve." On my way back to the motel, I passed the movie theater Mike and I used to go to. The posters had been replaced with new releases. The line outside was long, but there wasn't a single familiar face among them. I quickened my pace, rain soaking the hem of my pants, my suitcase wheels splashing through shallow puddles. On the third day, I made my first serious mistake. A man in a tailored suit ordered a pour-over coffee. I messed up the grind size, and the coffee came out unbearably bitter. He took one sip and spat it straight back into the cup. "This is what you call coffee," he snapped, his voice loud enough to draw stares from nearby tables. I apologized repeatedly, my hands shaking. The manager stepped in, remade the drink, and pulled me aside into the back. "Focus, Lisa," he said flatly, "or you won't make it past the trial period." After my shift, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for 5 minutes, not because of the coffee, but because of the loss of control. I used to handle complex cameras, spend 8 hours in a darkroom perfecting an image. Now I couldn't even make a decent cup of coffee. Zoe knocked on the door. "Come out," she said. "I'm buying you real coffee." After closing, we sat in the empty cafe. She showed me what she called her healing ritual, throwing her ex's belongings into the trash one by one. "This tie was Ted's," she said, "cheated on me with my best friend. This lighter belonged to Marco, forgot to mention he was married. You keep souvenirs from all your exes." I asked. "Trophies." She winked. "Reminders of what I survived." She handed me an empty can. "So what about Mike?" I reached into my wallet and pulled out an old movie ticket stub. "Midnight in Paris. Our first date." The ink was faded, the edges worn. I stared at it for a long time before dropping it into the can. "Keep it for now," Zoe said unexpectedly. "Throw it away when you know what it really means to you." That weekend, I met Annabelle Ross. She sat in the corner of the cafe with a MacBook open, design sketches scattered across the table. She looked to be in her 60s, silver hair cut sharply, red framed glasses perched on her nose. She ordered black coffee, then studied my name tag for a few seconds. "Lisa?" she asked. "Are you Lisa Chen from NYU's photography program?" I froze. "How did you?" "I saw the midterm exhibition," she said calmly. "Your series Hollow Intimacy technically strong, though the theme was a bit naive." She handed me a business card. "Annabelle Ross, gallery owner. We're looking for an assistant, also an intern. $25 an hour. 20 hours a week." My brain needed a moment to catch up. "Why me?" "Because there's anger in your work," she replied, sipping her coffee. "Anger is rarer than talent." Monday, 9 a.m. "Don't be late." She left with half her coffee untouched. Zoe leaned over the counter to look at the card and whistled. "Fifth Avenue address. Damn, you're about to level up." Monday morning, I stood in front of the glass doors of the Ross Gallery, my heart pounding. Inside, white walls displayed massive abstract paintings. The price tags had more zeros than phone numbers. "You're 30 seconds late," Annabelle said from behind me. She wore a perfectly tailored black suit, inspecting the space like a general surveying a battlefield. My first day consisted of dusting 12 paintings. "Use this cloth, clockwise, one spot at a time, organizing the client database by collecting preference, not alphabetically, and most importantly learning when to stay silent. 90% of the art business is observation," Annabelle said. "Watch which pieces clients stop in front of, listen to their questions, notice their watches. It's not snobbery, it's understanding what kind of beauty they're willing to pay for." At lunch, I met the other assistants. Maya, an art history graduate student, had been at the gallery for 2 years and dreamed of curating her own exhibition. She glanced at my cheap blazer and smiled politely. "Annabelle likes picking people off the street," she said. "Last year it was a bartender. Before that, a subway musician. Most don't last 3 months." "Why?" I asked. "Because she breaks you apart and rebuilds you," Maya replied. "And some people don't like what they become." That afternoon, Annabelle brought me to a private viewing. The collectors were an elderly couple. The wife was transfixed by a deep blue oil painting. The husband kept checking his watch. "This piece explores the depth of loneliness," Annabelle said softly. "Not negative loneliness, chosen solitude, the most luxurious state in modern life." The wife's eyes filled with tears. "How much?" 85,000. "But given how it speaks to your Mondrian." I can do 79. Sold. On the drive back, Annabel asked suddenly. Do you think I manipulated them? I don't know. I did, she said plainly, but with truth. That painting is about loneliness, and that woman is lost in her empty nest phase. I just built the bridge. Art is about building bridges between creation and ownership, emotion and money. She turned to me. Have you decided on your thesis project? I explained my idea, the vanishing woman. She listened without interrupting to safe. She said finally, you're photographing others so you don't have to expose yourself. Real artists bleed. That night, back in my motel room, I opened my notebook and began listing things. Mike didn't like the colors I wore. He ordered for me. He corrected my pronunciation. He forgot my birthday but remembered Chloe's. By the second page, a pattern emerged. I had been shrinking myself like a plant prune to fit someone else's space. On Wednesday, an unexpected guest walked into the cafe. Chloe. She didn't see me at first. She went straight to a window table, phone pressed to her ear. I know, babe, but where could she go? Probably back to her parents' place. She was talking about me. I crouched down, pretending to look for something, my heart pounding. Mike's upset, of course, but he brought it on himself. Chloe whispered. I told him he never paid enough attention to Lisa. What? The photos? Still on her account, I think. They were discussing me like a misplaced object. Chloe ordered a latte. I had Zoe take it over, through the kitchen window. I watched Chloe tap her manicured nails on the table, checking her phone waiting for Mike. I guessed he never came. She left half her coffee behind. You know her? Zoe asked. My ex's best friend, I said. The phrase sounded ridiculous out loud. Zoe snorted. Classic. Congratulations, you're officially the protagonist now. That night, I dreamed of Mike and Chloe laughing at my photographs, calling me delusional. I woke at 4 a.m., grabbed my camera, and photographed the scattered lights in the building across the street like the city blinking in its sleep. After that night, something inside me shifted. I stopped moving through my days on autopilot and started paying attention to the way light fell across the cafe counter at dawn, to the tired kindness in strangers' eyes, to the small unglamorous moments that made up real life. I began carrying my camera everywhere again. Not with the pressure to create something important, but simply to observe. The city no longer felt like an enemy testing my limits. It felt like a living organism I was finally learning to breathe with. On Friday afternoon, Annabel gave me my first real curatorial task. For the upcoming exhibition, she said, handing me a clipboard, I want you to select supporting works. Don't choose pieces that match too neatly. Choose works that create dialogue, tension, even conflict. I spent 3 hours in the storage room, surrounded by hundreds of unseen artworks. Paintings leaned against walls, sculptures sat half-wrapped in plastic, photographs were stacked in unlabeled boxes. Then I saw them, a series of small photographs showing a woman from behind. In every image, she faced away from the camera, on a bus, in a bedroom, at a kitchen sink. Yet her posture subtly changed from frame to frame, gradually loosening, as if she were learning how to exist without bracing herself. That's Claire Wilson's work, Annabel said, appearing silently in the doorway. She has severe social anxiety. These are self-portraits. They've never been exhibited, why not? I asked. Not market-friendly, Annabel replied, lifting one print, but they're honest, and honesty lasts longer than trends. She looked at me. That's the kind of work you should be making. That weekend, she invited me to her studio in Brooklyn. It was housed in an old factory building, with high ceilings and walls cluttered with canvases, unfinished sculptures, and towering stacks of art books. On one wall were photographs of Annabel in her 20s standing at protests, holding signs, her hair wild, her eyes burning with conviction. The 70s, she said lightly. We thought we'd change the world. She smiled. In some ways, we did, just not how we expected. She showed me her first major series, Blood and Promise, documenting her secret abortion. The images were raw, almost brutal, but impossibly powerful. My father was a pastor, she said. He threw me out. I slept on friends' couches for 3 months, but these photographs got me my first gallery contract. They taught me something important. Art cannot exist to please, it can only exist to tell the truth. She pointed at my camera. What's your truth, Lisa? Not the social issues you think you should care about, the thing burning under your skin. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened an old hard drive filled with photographs I had taken of Mike over the years. Hundreds of images, our relationship documented in visual stages. In the beginning, his gaze held genuine curiosity when he looked at me. Later, he began adjusting my posture, telling me where to stand so it looks better. In the final months, I appeared mostly in the background, blurred, smiling, present but secondary. I selected 10 images and printed them, then I began to destroy them. In the first photo, we stood beneath the whale model at the Natural History Museum. His arm was around my shoulder, but his eyes were fixed on his phone. I pierced the phone with a needle, creating clusters of tiny holes so that light passed through it, like a digital infection consuming him. In another image, flowers from my birthday, later revealed to have been chosen by Chloe, I tore off the petals and reassembled them into the shape of a bird flying out of the frame. In the last photo we ever took together, at a friend's party, I stood on the edge while he occupied the center. I carefully cut myself out and placed my image against a star-filled background, small but whole. At 5 in the morning, staring at these altered photographs, I felt something unfamiliar, not pain, but power. I wasn't erasing the past, I was rewriting it. Annabelle let me use an abandoned darkroom in the gallery basement. As long as I supplied my own materials, my life fell into a brutal but satisfying rhythm. Mornings at the cafe, afternoons at the gallery, nights in the darkroom. The smell of chemicals soothed me. Under the red safety light, watching images slowly emerge felt almost sacred, like witnessing myself take shape again. I began a new series titled Traces. I photographed objects heavy with memory. Unidentified stains on motel walls, sugar packets left behind by cafe regulars, discarded wedding invitations on subway seats. What others left behind became my map. Zoe agreed to be my first subject. I photographed the scars on her arms in close-up. At first she hesitated. "They're ugly," she said. "No," I replied, "they're proof you survived." When the prints developed, she stared at them for a long time. "Damn," she finally said, "I've never seen myself like this." A month later, I found a shared apartment. My roommate Sam was a medical student who practically lived at the hospital. My room was tiny, with a single window facing a fire escape, but I hung makeshift curtains and covered the walls with test prints. My work was growing, changing, becoming something I didn't need to explain to anyone. Annabelle began taking me to openings and art events. I learned quickly that New York's art world was beautiful on the surface and ruthless underneath. Conversations about visual language and postmodern context masked careful calculations: who was talking to whom, whose work hung at eye level, whose name carried weight. At a Chelsea gallery opening, I saw Mike. He stood among a group of investment bankers, champagne in hand, laughing loudly. Chloe wasn't with him. He looked thinner, more polished, somehow more distant. My first instinct was to hide, to assume I was the one who should feel ashamed. But Annabelle noticed my stillness. "You know him." "My ex." She studied him, then me. "Go say hello." "I can't, Lisa," she said calmly, guiding me forward. "Running only keeps ghosts alive." I crossed the room, each step heavy. Mike noticed me first. His smile froze, his glass tilting slightly. "Lisa?" he said, genuine shock slipping through. "Mike," I replied. An awkward silence followed. His friends watched with open curiosity. "You work here?" he asked, glancing at my badge. "I'm an intern," I said. "Ross Gallery, Annabelle Ross." Recognition flickered in his eyes. Recalculation. "So, you're really doing photography?" he said, forcing casualness. "I always was," I answered. "I just have space now." He tried to explain Chloe's emergency, her father's hospitalization. The excuse arrived a month too late, like medicine past its expiration date. "I hope he's recovering," I said evenly. He reached for me. I stepped back. "I should go," I said with a polite smile. "Annabelle's waiting." As I walked away, my back straight, I felt his gaze on me, confused, unsettled, maybe regretful, and for the first time, I didn't need clarity from him. The weeks that followed blurred into something both exhausting and intoxicating. I was running on too little sleep and too much adrenaline, but for the first time in years, I felt aligned with myself. Every photograph I took seemed to peel away another layer of who I used to be: the girl who waited, who softened her edges to be more lovable, who mistook being chosen for being valued. In the darkroom, alone with the quiet drip of water and the hum of the ventilation fan, I felt more present than I ever had in a shared bed. My new series began to take shape with unexpected clarity. I called it Contact Points instead of Faces. I photographed hands gripping subway poles, hands resting on hospital railings, hands touching windows fogged with breath, hands letting go. Each image was intimate without being invasive, anonymous yet deeply personal. When I showed the early proofs to Annabel, she studied them in silence for a long time. "This," she finally said, tapping one print lightly, "is what it looks like when someone stops apologizing for existing." One rainy evening, while photographing night cleaners outside Chelsea Market, I noticed a man watching me, not in the uncomfortable, lingering way I had grown used to, but with quiet curiosity. He was holding a bouquet of sunflowers awkwardly, as if he weren't sure where to put his hands. "These are for my roommate," he said quickly when he realized I had noticed him. "He just passed the bar exam, but honestly," he hesitated, then smiled, "you might need them more." I really laughed for the first time in months. "I don't even know you." "Then this is pure generosity," he said, extending the flowers. "I'm Ben Miller. I work as a physical therapist at a children's hospital. I don't usually stop strangers, but the way you were photographing, so focused, it felt important." We walked together for a few blocks, talking about photography, about his patients, about the worst pizza places in New York. We agreed instantly. He didn't ask for my number. Instead, he said, "Let's keep the beauty of coincidence," and waved goodbye. 3 days later, he walked into the cafe. "Total accident," he said, hands raised. "I was just thirsty." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Just exchange numbers already. You're making me anxious." Ben wasn't conventionally dazzling. No designer suit, no practice charm. He pushed his glasses up when he talked, listened without interrupting, and when he laughed, there was a slight gap between his teeth that made him seem unguarded. With him, I felt seen, not evaluated, not adjusted, just seen. Our first real date was at a small Puerto Rican restaurant near the hospital. Ben greeted the owner by name. "The mofongo here heals the soul," he promised. He told me about his work helping children relearn how to move after injuries or illness, turning rehabilitation into games so they wouldn't be afraid to try again. "The hardest part is psychological," he said. "They're scared of failing, scared of pain. I have to create a space where it's safe to try, like art." I said without thinking. He smiled and nodded. "Exactly. It's all about courage, being vulnerable, risking failure, rebuilding after something breaks." In that moment, I knew he understood, not theoretically, but fundamentally. The night before my graduation exhibition, I installed the final piece, an interactive wall inviting viewers to write down moments when they felt invisible. The notes began appearing almost immediately. I raised my hand 3 times in a meeting. My boss called on a male colleague instead. "My mother introduces me as my daughter. She's not married yet." He said I was too sensitive when I pointed out his lies. Reading them, I felt a deep, aching connection. My story wasn't unique, it was one variation among many. That realization was both devastating and comforting. Annabel stood beside me after everyone else left, surveying the completed space. "You've done it," she said quietly. "It's not perfect. Critics will say you're exploiting your personal life. Remember this. Only people with the privilege of silence accuse others of oversharing. For those who've been muted, exposure is an act of defiance." She hugged me, brief, firm. "I'm proud of you." Opening night was overwhelming. The gallery buzzed with voices and camera flashes. Professors nodded thoughtfully. Strangers lingered in front of my work. An art critic I recognized from magazines took notes for a long time in front of traces. Then I saw Mike. He stood in the corner, Chloe holding his arm. He looked tired, unsettled, staring at my photographs as if they were written in a language he'd never learned. Our eyes met briefly before I turned away. Ben appeared beside me, offering a single white rose. "I was thinking," he said softly, "the disappearing woman has started to reappear." Someone snapped a photo at that exact moment, me smiling, the rose in my hand, my work behind me. That was when Mike's voice cut through the noise. "Lisa," got bored and decided to run away. The room seemed to quiet. Ben stepped forward instinctively, but I touched his arm gently. I turned to Mike, really looking at him for the first time, not the version I loved, but the man standing there, angry and confused. "I wasn't playing," I said calmly. "I was leaving." "There's a difference." He stared at the walls, at the images exposing what I had once hidden. "You put our private life on display?" he asked, incredulous. "Yes," I replied, "because it isn't just private. It's my story, and I get to tell it." Annabel joined us, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "Lisa has already sold 3 pieces tonight," she said coolly, "including one to a major Chelsea collector. You should be proud." Mike's face drained of color. He asked to talk privately. No, I said. Everything that needed to be said is already on the wall, and I walked away. The exhibition ran for 3 weeks. During that time, 7 of my pieces were sold, including one acquired by the New York Public Library. Annabelle offered me a permanent position at the gallery, with a salary high enough that I could finally leave the cafe, though I chose to keep 1 shift a week, partly for Zoe, partly to remind myself where I had rebuilt my footing. A small art magazine interviewed me. The headline read, "From being overlooked to self-defined, Lisa Chen's visual diary." On the day it was published, I bought 20 copies at the cafe. Zoe laughed and called me a narcissist. "It's not ego," I said, flipping through the pages carefully. "It's proof that the girl who once waited silently had learned how to speak." At graduation, my parents flew in from California. My father stood quietly with my exhibition catalog in his hands, studying the images longer than I expected. "I was afraid this path would hurt you," he said at last, "but maybe pain is part of becoming. Your mother and I were proud of you." I cried into his shoulder, years of distance finally dissolving. 2 months later, Ben and I walked across the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. The East River burned gold beneath us. "I've been thinking," he said, "the kids at the hospital, their recovery journeys. If you documented them, it might help other children feel less alone." I stopped and looked at him. "You've been thinking about this for a while, haven't you?" "A few weeks," he admitted. "I didn't want it to feel like I was using your work." I kissed him, soft and sure. "I think it's beautiful." That fall, preparations began for my first solo exhibition. I titled it Reconstruction. The show combined altered archival photographs, street portraits, and a collaborative project with the hospital children, who painted their superpowers while I photographed their interaction with the artwork. The night before the opening, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was the photography book I'd left behind at Mike's apartment, the one he'd never asked about. A note was tucked inside. "This always should have been yours. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. I wish you well, truly, M." I opened the cover and found an extra photograph he had added. Me through the cafe window, wiping down tables in early morning light. The date on the back was from my 2nd week after leaving. He had seen me. I just hadn't known. I included the photo in the exhibition under a new title, The Unnoticed Gaze, not as nostalgia, but as a reminder being seen means nothing if you don't see yourself. Opening night was packed. Annabelle introduced the show, praising a young artist's courage and vision. I saw familiar faces everywhere: Zoe with her new girlfriend, Sam with hospital colleagues, professors, collectors, even the man who once complained about my coffee bought my first piece. Mike didn't come. That felt right. When I spoke, I searched the crowd and found Ben holding a little girl from the hospital, freshly discharged for the evening. "Art used to mean perfection to me," I said into the microphone. "Now it means truth, even when truth is messy and painful. It means daring to show the cracks because that's where the light gets in." The applause rose like a wave. A year later, my work joined a national touring exhibition called New Voices. Ben and I moved into a Brooklyn apartment with a darkroom and a small garden where sunflowers grew wildly in summer. I still worked at the cafe once a week. Zoe now managed the place and was planning a second location, "for girls who need a restart," she said. One Friday afternoon, Mike walked in alone, simple shirt, jeans. He looked calmer. "Just coffee," he said gently. "I hear your latte's the best in the city." "Zoe's recipe," I replied. "She's the genius." While I worked, he said quietly, "I saw Reconstruction online. It was powerful. You always had that strength. I just didn't see it." I handed him his coffee. "We're all learning." He nodded, smiled faintly, and left. Sunlight spilled across the floor where he'd stood. That evening, Ben came home with takeout and my favorite red wine. "How was your day?" he asked. "Good," I said, then corrected myself. "Really good." We sat on the fire escape, eating Thai food, city lights flickering below. I leaned into his shoulder, whole not because he completed me, but because I had learned to be complete on my own. "I'm thinking about my next project," I said, "about memory, how it shapes us, and how we reshape it." "Tell me everything," he said, smiling. As I spoke, my hands traced invisible lines in the air, weaving the future. The city breathed beneath us, vast, chaotic, beautiful. In a city of millions, I had found my place, not as someone's shadow, not as someone's afterthought, but as Lisa, creator, storyteller, fully present in her own life. What I once thought was abandonment turned out to be the beginning, and the best part. I'm still writing the story one deliberate choice at a time.